Hey everybody, welcome to Cyber Sentinel. I'm Alan Adcock, and on this episode, we're joined by Patrick Houlahan, who is the CEO of Strategic Leadership Consultants. They're based here in Atlanta. Patrick, tell us a little bit about what is going on over at Strategic Leadership Consultants.
Yeah, well, a whole lot. Interestingly enough, the focus of Strategic Leadership Consultants is to build inspired, compassionate, mission-driven leaders. And kind of the ways we go to market is either through keynote speeches, working at national sales meetings, things of that nature, but also consulting work, where we work with teams on planning, debriefing, implementing leadership within an organization. So even during the COVID shutdown, we just shifted over and started working behind the scenes instead of up on the stage.
That's great. I mean, with this technology platform, we can do a lot of those kind of meetings and episodes like this where we're just doing it remote. So when you go into an organization or you go into to talk to a national sales meeting kind of thing, what are your topics there? You're talking about leadership. Obviously, it's in the name of the company there. How do you go into that? How do you address that?
Well, there are a lot of organizations out there that they focus on leadership. We're going to teach your teams leadership skills. Then there are organizations that, we're going to give you a process. We're going to teach you how to plan or how we're going to execute. And the one thing that I found after my career in the military and in the military as well is that you really have to hit it from both sides. You just can't teach leadership without process, and you can't teach process without leadership because they'll both just fall away. So within organizations, we put the bow on it, if you will. We attack it from both ends, and not only can we help you plan, but these are the leadership tools and techniques and procedures that need to be in place to make sure that that plan gets executed at the end of the day.
So with so many companies having employees that are now working remotely, I mean, this is, for some organizations, they've been like this forever, right? My wife works at her work. Her team is all in different states. She's worked from home forever. But often organizations haven't done that because they're worried about how are they going to lead and build that company without having people there in the office. Any topics there you want to talk about?
Well, you know what, Alan, you're absolutely correct. Everybody says this is the new normal. Maybe for the organizations that were strictly in the office, but I've been on WebEx meetings, starting in 2010-ish. So this hasn't been necessarily the new normal. Teams have been doing this before. It's just now everybody seems to be doing it. And there are some things, I think, from a leadership perspective that, when you move to a remote environment, especially with the chaos that seems to be happening in the world right now, that leaders can do. And number one is leaders have to ignore the noise. You can't be distracted by the news every single day. You have to bring your team in to ignore the noise as well and focus on what they need to do. I'm not saying you can't be empathetic, that you can't acknowledge that there's COVID, there's racial issues. You have to acknowledge those things to be empathetic, but at the end of the day, you got to bring your team together and focus on what's going on. The other thing, and probably the most important thing, is you have to be a leader. You have to watch your tone. If you're walking around complaining, if you think the world's going down the drain and you keep voicing that, as that moves down throughout the organization, that's going to be amplified. So as a leader, you need to watch your tone, because not only are your employees watching how you act, even on Zoom, right? Just because you're on Zoom doesn't mean they're not reading your body language and the way you do voice things. But not only your employees reading that, your customers are as well. And finally, you have to get personal. And when I say get personal, a true leader really understands their people, what makes them tick, what's going on. And instead of just going, Bob, Sally, how you doing today? You have to go further and deeper than that. Ask about their families. How are things at home? How are you coping? Do you want to talk and be that resource and that sounding board? Because that is critically important, especially with the dynamics and everything that's changing. a true leader really needs to get personal with their teams.
That's great. We've put together, we've worked with you on another project where we did a lot of work around planning and how we change planning in this environment that's very chaotic.
Yeah.
So how do we, as business owners, address the planning component that you talked about here as well, that goes kind of hand in hand with leadership in this?
In terms of planning, unless your Q2 plan or your 2020 plan had a contingency for a global pandemic, those are out the window, right? And a lot of teams need to shorten their timeline, their planning horizons. I like to think of it as, it's crisis action planning. And this is not unlike, what I did in combat or what we do in the military when things really get hectic. You have to shorten your timelines. You have to be very clear on your objectives and goals. No pies in the sky. We're going to increase our call rate. We're going to increase customer satisfaction. You got to be very specific on what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. You need to look at what you can do, not what you can't do. We can't do this and we can't do that. And that kind of goes almost back to that tone that's negative. So look at what you can do, figure out the opportunities that are out there, recognize the obstacles that stand in your way, and then get it done. And finally, now more than ever, you need to have a rapid feedback loop. We called it in the military CCIRs, or Commander's Critical Information Requirements. These are the things that you would go knock on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning and wake the CO up because this happened. So as a leader, you need to provide that for your team. As a team member, you need to be looking for those and providing that rapid feedback loop so that you can pivot and you can remain agile and you can respond rather than react to the situation.
Well, in cybersecurity, we get some of those knocks on the door at 2 in the morning too, and they're never fun because something that we don't want to happen is happening at a client somewhere. So not to the same level as you in the military, I'm sure, but it seems like it some days. They maybe come from the same places sometimes too. So as you're going through this process of working with teams, we're developing leaders. We're giving them some tools to use. We're putting together these plans that are really short in duration. As we go through those things, we implement new ways of doing stuff. How do we know if those are working or not? Do we keep repeating this? Did it work? Did it not work? What's the process to put in place there?
Yeah, it's a great point, Alan. The feedback loop's important, but what really needs to happen within every organization, both now, before now, and in the future, is to establish a culture of debriefing. A lot of teams, they review the numbers. This is what our numbers are, and then they go out and repeat the same actions, activities, and end up with the same results. And that's the definition of insanity, right? So you need to have a culture of debriefing, and that is as much an art form and a leadership skill as it is a process. What's great is if you could spell the word debrief, you know the steps. So the first one is you have to decide to debrief. It's got to be part of your operational rhythm. It's got to be calendared, where we're going to have it, when we're going to have it. E is set the environment. This goes back to that leadership part. The leader has to set the environment. A debrief has to be a safe, open, and honest event. It's not a place where you play whack-a-mole at Chuck E. Cheese and you just beat people up when they do something wrong. Everybody needs to be able to speak freely, and the leader really sets that tone by being critical of their own performance first. Then you brief the results, and then you should be able to answer, did we achieve those results, with a yes or no. That's how they ought to be written in that action planning, but also the desired effects. We may have hit our number, but did it change and get what we want to get done? Finally, you look at the root causes. You got to go at least 3 layers deep to really get to it. Identify best practices, execute them, and then the final step, which goes back to leadership, is you got to follow up to make sure that those best practices get executed, and really you're following up with the health of the team, making sure that, you know what, the debrief has been a teaching and a learning opportunity. You thank your people for your time, and then you go out and get after it the next day.
That's great. That's a great acronym that you've used there, and great advice for building those teams and getting that feedback as a leader. So you're not making those insane choices and doing the same thing over and over and over again. So that's great. Patrick, if somebody listening to this wants to get in touch with you and work with strategic leadership consultants, how would they do that?
Really, two easiest ways is you just send me an email, Patrick and then all one word, strategicleadershipconsulting.com. You can go to my website, same strategicleadershipconsulting.com, and send me a message there. Or you know what? Give me a call. My phone number is 858-663-3773. Be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. And that goes for speaking engagements and working one-on-one with small business as well, I would assume.
Yes, sir, it does.
Awesome. This is Alan Adcock. If you want to learn more about Cyber Sentinel, you can find us on social media at #CyberSentinel. Our website is www.ascgrp.com, and we'll look for you on the next episode.